Kaveh, Darmesh and Henry Winter. Henry, of course, did that interview with Marcus Rashford. Tell us, how did it come about?
Well, I mean, I've known, as many journalists have, Marcus Rashford, for a few years. Obviously, covered his England career, covered a lot of the issues which often don't get covered so much in the media. The kind of good work they do, the community work. You know about it. Raheem Sterling with his sort of his racism. He's got a fantastic foundation. Michael Carrick, obviously, he's retired now. He's got a fantastic foundation which works in Manchester and Newcastle. Working with sort of young kids, coaching. So many of these players have got them. So all the England players have got it. So obviously Marcus Rashford hit the headlines very much by taking on number 10 Downing Street and feeding kids in this country so that they can actually go into their classes. I mean, it's crazy, 21st century wealthy country like ours, and but fortunately Marcus won that argument, that battle, and kids now go into classes and can focus on their education more because of the food that they were getting and that he helped them get with other people as well. So yeah, always sort of admired that aspect of them. I mean, look, you played sport. I sometimes find it very difficult to differentiate the elite sportsman with the individual. I think the two merge so much, and you often see an individual's character comes out with the way they sort of perform. So particularly with this generation of England players, they're pretty conscientious individuals, and they've obviously got huge platforms that they can communicate their message. So with Rashford, what came about that at Christmas, he was going back to his old primary school, and there were 410 kids there, and he had presents for all of them. And one of the teachers just sort of came up to me and said, this is the only present some of these kids will get at Christmas this year. And that, is shocking and sad, and fair play to Marcus Rashford. The flip side of that, of course, is that he will be judged mainly on goals, on assists, on his contribution on the pitch. And if you talk to Manchester United players, and I was at Fulham yesterday, and Ruben Amorim is clearly unimpressed with what he perceives as a lack of effort in training. Rashford, I think himself would say that he's working hard in training.
I gather you've got an update from the Rashford camp on this situation, haven't you? Is that right?
Just my understanding is that he is training hard, but I think the understanding also and the direction of travel for the last sort of few months has been that Rashford, for tactical reasons and financial reasons, he needs to move on. Tactically, he doesn't fit into the tactical template the Ruben Amorim has of 3-4-2-1. You were talking about Garnacho earlier. Where does Rashford fit in that? He's not a natural number 10. He can play as the 9, but really he doesn't hold the ball up necessarily as Amorim wants. So for tactical reasons, also our old friend PSR and financial reasons, Marcus Rashford is on a lot of money there. And for Amorim to invest in the squad as he wants to bring in the type of players that fit 3-4-2-1, they need to move some players out. So,
Kaveh, we touched on this in 5 o'clock. Do you see Rashford getting out of United before February 3rd's deadline?
Well, if the move is right for him, yeah, I can see it happening. But if it's not right for him, then he's well within his rights to stay at Old Trafford. Because 18 months ago, he signed a new contract. That was a new contract that was offered to him, and it doesn't run out till the summer of 2028. So he's well within his rights to stay where he is. My personal feeling is that there will be more options for him opening up the closer we get to the deadline. Because I would imagine Manchester United are saying to clubs who are interested in taking him at the moment, you're going to have to pay pretty much nearly all his wages. Whereas perhaps if we get closer to the deadline, they may lower those demands, and then more potential moves could come into play. That's what we've seen happen in the past with players.
Is there enough time, Darmesh?
I just wanted to ask Henry a question, actually, because you did that interview, I think it's December the 17th, so it's 2 weeks before the window opens. So when you're hearing him say, I want a new challenge, is the first thing that's coming into your head that there must be a club there that's already lined up? Because to do that interview and say that he wants to leave, and we're now a week away from the window closing and he still hasn't got a club.
In the run-up to that conversation, there were a lot of well-placed stories, well-sourced stories in the Telegraph, the Times, the Guardian, you know, by well-respected, you know, people with contacts like you in Manchester, which were basically saying that Manchester United were considering moving Rashford on. There were even figures on the, you know, what would they want, 30 million, 40 million. So I think everyone sort of saw the direction of travel. So coming back to your point, was there a club out there, specific club? I don't think so. But I just find the whole situation very sad. And I think that one of the things that Rashford was very keen on was that he would go out through the front door with his head held high, because clearly he's going to leave. I would be surprised if he said he
in this window.
Yeah, he has to leave, because you look at the situation. I mean, at Craven Cottage last night, Ruben Amorim, he clearly doesn't, you know, have any involvement in his plans going forward. He needs to look. He's 27. He needs to get back to the sort of form and the focus and the love of the game of sort of, you know, 2 years ago when he was scoring all those goals. If he wants to get back into the England squad, you know, he's 27. He looks at that England squad and he just sees all these fantastic players, the chance they've got of winning a World Cup in 18 months' time. To do that, he needs to be playing, and he's not going to be playing for tactical reasons, for financial reasons, for whatever it is. Amorim clearly doesn't see him as part of his plans. He needs to move on. He needs to move on soon, get back playing again and showing what a good player he is.
And the point Carve made about the later in the window you go, and the more of these comments that Ruben Amorim makes, puts United's position slightly weaker if they want to offload Marcus Rashford. So whereas Carve was saying at the start of the window, right, United, you can pay all the wages, it's clearly not going to happen. A club is not going to be able to do that. But what they did last year, this time last year with Sancho, when he went to Dortmund, they actually ended up making a profit on Sancho's wages, because as much as people will think it's not a great look for Manchester United to be paying any part of Rashford's wages if he goes, they did the same with Sancho. They might have paid half of his wages to go to Dortmund, but the better that Sancho did and the better Dortmund did, the percentage that United paid came down to the point where they actually made a profit on it. Is that something they can do with Rashford? The difference is half of Marcus Rashford's wages compared to half of Jadon Sancho's wages is still a big gap. That's the issue.
I mean, we often turn these things into pantomimes, you know, and sort of we've got two characters and we build them up, and one's whacking each other over the head, and is Marcus Rashford going to respond to the 63-year-old goalkeeper potentially taking his place and all that? Well, he's probably got more chance of playing, as Amorim was alluding to last night. I think we should have a grown-up conversation, and I hope they are, because they're two intelligent people, Marcus Rashford on one side and Ruben Amorim on the other, and they should just shake hands and move on. You know, it happens all the time in football. Do it with respect. Marcus Rashford has to be aware of his legacy at Manchester United, which should be greater than it is. But it's eroding by every comment from Ruben Amorim, and he needs to move on, and with an opportunity at some point to say to the Manchester United fans, because he is a Manchester United fan, and say, I've loved playing for this club. I'm sorry it didn't work out over the last 18 months for whatever reasons, but I genuinely wish you all the best, which I think he does. But he needs to restart his career elsewhere, and you've got a brilliant head coach in Ruben Amorim, who Manchester United and the powers that be upstairs, Ratcliffe, are backing 100%, as they should do. And Ruben Amorim will be at Manchester United longer than Marcus Rashford, so make the break soon.
That's a good point. Rashford, though, Carve, given what Ruben Amorim said yesterday, that he'd rather play a 63-year-old goalkeeping coach than Rashford, is he done at Manchester United?
I mean, judging by what his manager says, you'd find it very difficult to imagine a scenario where he plays for Ruben Amorim again. But having said that, 18 months ago, he signed a new contract at United. It doesn't run out till the summer of 2028. So unless United or his representatives find a new club for him before deadline day next week, then he'll be staying at United. And then Ruben Amorim will have a decision to make whether to freeze him out or to reintegrate him into his first team squad. For what it's worth, my own personal opinion is that on his day, Marcus Rashford is still a brilliant footballer. Let's not forget, a couple of seasons ago, he scored more than 30 goals for United.
He's not played for ages, though, Carve. We don't know what his day's like anymore.
Well, I think we do. We still remember how good he was. OK, there are some issues at the moment in his relationship with Ruben Amorim. But as a football fan, and as a fan of Marcus Rashford, you'll be hoping that, yes, better days lie ahead for him. And if it's not going to be at United, it'll be somewhere else.
What is interesting is that Henry Winter did that interview with Marcus Rashford. Henry's going to be on the show a bit later on. That was on December the 17th. That's 2 weeks before the transfer window opens. So if you're doing an interview then and saying that I need a new challenge, I need the next steps in my career, I think the growing feeling then was, well, something's lined up for Marcus Rashford to leave Manchester United. There must be a club who are going to take him. But day 27 in this transfer window, he's still at Manchester United. The question maybe to ask is, has Rashford maybe overestimated the market that was in for him, potentially? Maybe, because he's still at United. You had AC Milan who were interested in him at the start of the window. They've now signed Kyle Walker. They can't actually sign Rashford now because of the non-EU player rule that they've got in Serie A. Borussia Dortmund have shown an interest throughout this transfer window. The finances simply don't work. Carve mentioned it there about Barcelona. Yes, he wants to go there, but all of the financial implications with that club makes it very, very difficult to do. So, as it stands, day 27, as I say, he's still at United, and it doesn't look like he's any closer to finding that club. And Carve made a really good point there, because if come 11 p.m. on February the 3rd, he's still at United, there's going to have to be some sort of reintegration into the first team squad, because if in the long term he is not part of Amorim's plans, they need to raise his market value by the summer. So he has to be playing, ideally at a European club, if not for Manchester United, and playing regularly and scoring goals.
We put that to Shay. Reintegration. Can that happen, given that your manager has publicly humiliated you?
I think it feels from the outside, obviously looking in, that Ruben's come in and he's had to make a bit of a statement towards Marcus, and not in a bad way. He said if he trains properly, if his lifestyle's properly, if he does everything right, he'll actually be in the squad. I don't think he's ever once said, I don't want him part of the team or part of the squad. But if he's having a bad attitude, which we feel that's the word coming out of Manchester United, and he's not training to the standard that Ruben wants him at, then I think it's actually quite refreshing that a Man United manager's come in. He's been brutally honest with everyone. Maybe people will say too honest at times, but at the same time, I think every single player knows where he stands in. Because if Marcus can take a day off training or put his feet up for an afternoon, Garnacho, and it's the next one, Ahmad, maybe, it goes through the squad. So I think Ruben, you mentioned from a financial point of view and a business point of view, they would have to maybe, but I don't think Ruben Amorim will do that. I think he's set his stall out now and think, well, if he doesn't get up to the standard, he'll not be part of my plans. And I think it's a strong, positive message from the manager.
Do you see Rashford getting a move before February the 3rd?
I think it suits all parties, if I'm being honest. And I think we're all of the opinion Marcus Rashford, in his pomp, is a brilliant player. So I think even just purely forget all the finances and the wages and the salaries and the fee and all that kind of stuff. Just when you talk about football and his love for football, he hasn't seen him smile for, it seems, like a couple of years. He's not enjoying himself anymore. And it feels the best thing would be a fresh start, even for 4 or 5 months at a new club. Try and get his love for football back. And then, he's in a better position. Of course, Manchester United in a better position as well.
A lot of people have drawn the comparison with Rashford and Sancho, what happened with Sancho last year. To our knowledge and our information, there hasn't been an actual falling out between Amorim and Rashford, despite what he's saying in these news conferences, because he's still training with the first team squad, is Rashford. He's just not getting picked. I think this comparison is more when Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang left Arsenal. He was on big wages and they just decided, regardless of how much of a loss that they're going to make, because that is likely to happen with the wages that Rashford is on, I think Ruben Amorim is thinking we need to make this
United
this
won't
cut
do
now.
that, though, will they, given that they're after money?
They might have to. Because at the moment, if he doesn't get a move and he's not playing, what are they going to do? They're going to have to. There's going to be some sort of loss at some stage, unless they can get a really good transfer fee. And like I mentioned before, they're going to need him to be playing to raise that market value ahead of the summer.
Interesting. Let's talk Garnacho, Dharmesh, developments today.
So if you look at the situation with Garnacho, it feels like his future is the key to what Manchester United could potentially do with incomings and outgoings in this transfer window. I was at the game yesterday when United beat Fulham, and all the headlines were Amorim's quotes on Marcus Rashford. But he also spoke about Garnacho, and he started him in 4 of their last 5 games in all competitions. So you would think, right, he wants to keep him. He's got a future at United. United don't want to sell him, but Ruben Amorim says that anything can happen. He hasn't ruled out Garnacho leaving in this transfer window. Now, if they were to sell him, it would help with United's PSR, because every club is looking towards June the 30th still, and United, you know, they need to look after that side of their finances, hence why we keep hearing there's no one untouchable in that squad. And if they do manage to do that, not only will it help with PSR, but it would help with potentially getting in players in this transfer window to start this rebuild that Amorim's trying to do. Napoli have made a bid, that's been rejected. I think they want to find some sort of compromise between what United want and what they're prepared to pay. And also Chelsea are interested as well. They're yet to come in with a formal bid, but they're, as Carve, I'm sure will be able to explain, they're just lurking around in the background for Garnacho.
Tell us.
Lurking.
Yes.
Well, look, I think everybody knows that Chelsea have a player trading model, and they are interested in Garnacho. Normally, a player of his age and of his quality, Manchester United wouldn't even think about selling him. But if he becomes available at the right price and the terms of the deal suit Chelsea, I think Chelsea would definitely make a move for him. But I think it would also depend on players leaving Chelsea as well. So I could see it happening, but I think people have sort of jumped ahead of the story, really. I know there have been some reports that Chelsea have made offers for the player. As far as we're aware, they haven't made any offers. But there are very good relations between Chelsea and Manchester United at the highest level. So it's definitely a possibility and something that could happen, especially if he decides that he'd rather stay in the Premier League rather than moving to Italy.
Could a possible move to Chelsea depend on what happens to Nkunku?
I think what happens to Nkunku depends a lot on what happens at Bayern Munich with Matisse Tell, the young French player they've got there. Chelsea are interested in signing him. I think if he was willing to come to Chelsea, then Chelsea would be much more likely to do a deal to sell Nkunku to Bayern Munich. There's interest in Nkunku from United as well, but only on a loan deal. What was quite interesting is this weekend, Nkunku hadn't been playing. He'd been on the bench, but Enzo Maresca hadn't been using him. But he came on for half an hour against Manchester City on Saturday. Speaking to Chelsea supporters, though, I mean, some of them are quite excited by the fact that Garnacho may be coming, but they are saying, we don't need another wide player. What we need is a goalkeeper and an out-and-out striker.
Should United sell Garnacho?
And should Chelsea buy a new goalkeeper?
Stupid. I think Chelsea have 9 goalkeepers. How many goalkeepers do they need? I'm trying to stay in the goalkeepers union here. I mean, Robert Sanchez had a poor couple of weeks, and that was highlighted again at the weekend. He just needs to get his confidence back, I think. I know Jorgensen's pushing him hard as well behind him, so they have options in the goalkeeping department. Garnacho, it's a tricky one because a bit like, I don't know, the likes of Newcastle having to sell Anderson, you know, the clubs, the way the rules and the laws are set up, it's not what the fans want, I don't think, because you have to sell your best. Cole Palmer at Man City, for example, you know, the fans want to see local. I know Garnacho's not local, but people coming through the academy representing the first team. But with the way the PSR is and the financial fair play, these are the most profitable assets they can sell, because if they sell Garnacho, I don't know what the fee is, lads, but 50 or 60 million, then Ruben can reinvest that in the squad. I don't know. I mean, I think he burst onto the scene a little bit, and then he's sort of gone off the ball, and then he's come back up again. But I think with young players that happens. You get a bit of a trajectory up and down. He's a very good player, but again, if Ruben Amorim gets maybe 60 million for him or something along them lines, he might think I can get, you know, a left wing back perhaps and a striker for the same kind of money, because he needs to. There's no getting away from it. He needs to freshen up that squad.
Just very quickly, Napoli are expected to resume talks with United over Garnacho, and what Carve was saying about Nkunku, it would clearly be easier if United are dealing with Chelsea with Garnacho to try and get a deal done for Nkunku. But I don't think it would be ruled out if United sold Garnacho to Napoli. They'd still be interested in trying to get Nkunku in on loan. I think when you look at how Ruben Amorim plays and his formation, everyone's saying Garnacho's not a wing back and he's not a 10, whereas Nkunku could probably fit in to that, into one of the two number 10 roles. So when you look at it like that, it could work, but I mean, there's so many different factors that would have to come together for those deals to go through.
Speaking of fitting in, will Dorgu fit in at United?
So, as I mentioned before, Garnacho being key to a lot of potential deals, PSR-wise, but also trying to bring players in. Bringing in money for Garnacho would clearly help them negotiate further with Lecce for Patrick Dorgu, the left wing-back, which has become a real problematic position for United. Luke Shaw hasn't been able to be fit. Tyrell Malacia was out for like 18 months before he came back. So I think there's a gap in valuation between the two clubs. The Lecce president is playing the game. We don't want to sell Dorgu, but I think United are seeing that as maybe a negotiating tactic and maybe brinkmanship, who's going to blink first. But United will not overpay. So they're being very, very careful about how they want to spend their money, and they will have a valuation for Dorgu. Now, there's an alternative if they don't manage to agree a deal with Lecce for Dorgu, and that is Alvaro Fernandez Carreras. Now, he was at Manchester United. He went on loan to Benfica. Benfica had the option to make it permanent, which they did because he impressed. But United inserted a buyback clause in that for around 18 million euros, which is around 15 million pounds. So they could exercise that buyback clause to try and bring in Fernandez Carreras if Dorgu doesn't work. Now, if they sign either Dorgu or... Yeah. That's where we are now. That's where we are. If they sign one of those two, then I think they will allow Tyrell Malacia to maybe go out on loan to get more regular first-team football. So, clear as mud.
Yeah. We're going to...
Marcus Rashford is set to leave Manchester United this month, with manager Ruben Amorim repeatedly criticising his performances in training and attitude. Most recently, Amorim said he would rather name 63-year-old goalkeeper coach Jorge Vital on the bench over Rashford, as the forward does not have the attitude of someone giving the maximum every day. That is something United legend Roy Keane has previously criticised Rashford for, describing his body language as really shocking after a 1-0 defeat to Arsenal back in 2020. I looked at Rashford closely today, who has had a lot of plaudits over the past few months and is still a young man, but his body language was shocking, really shocking, Keane said. He was shrugging his shoulders when things weren't going his way. You roll your sleeves up at Manchester United. When things aren't going your way, that's when you look at your leaders and characters. Keane's comments certainly appear to echo Amorim's thoughts on the England international. It's always the same reason: the training, the way I see a footballer should do in life, Amorim said when asked about Rashford being left out of the squad once again for United's win over Fulham on Sunday. It's every day, every detail. If things don't change, I will not change. It's the same situation for every player. If you do the maximum and right things, we can use every player. We missed a little bit of pace to go and change the game and move some pieces. But I prefer it like that. I would put Vital before I put the player who does not give the maximum every day, so I will not change in that department. Fellow United legend Rio Ferdinand, meanwhile, believes there is no way back for Rashford after Amorim's latest comments. We all have days off or moments when we're not performing well, lacking confidence, but effort isn't really one of the things I would want to be hearing a manager say is lacking in my makeup. That's a damning comment, because I think he knows what the reaction is after that comment. He's not saying that without thinking, where does this go after? There's really no way back for Marcus after that, I don't think, with that type of comment. You're looking at it and going, he has only been there a short bit of time and has actually straight away gone, has pulled out the 9mm revolver and just gone bang. There's no way back from that. If he comes back, that means other players can now take their foot off the gas and still have a way back into the team.